Today is March 6th, 2024, Wednesday. My name is David Pyle, and I'm interviewing Jeff Richcreek at the Rocky Mountain Regional VA Medical Center in Aurora, Colorado, as part of the Remembering Our Veterans program. So, Rich, thanks very much for coming today. I really appreciate your taking time to
You're
do
welcome.
this.
You can call me Rich anytime.
Thanks. Okay, sir. So if you would, how about telling us about your childhood, where you're from and where you grew up, and et cetera, et cetera.
I was born in a place called Inspiration, Arizona. The youngest of 4 kids. Spent the first 3 years there until my family decided they needed to move to California. I didn't find out till 2 years ago why we moved to California. Apparently my father had issues with fidelity and someone threatened the family, so we moved that night. So that's how I ended up in California. So I grew up in California, lived across the street from the grade school that I went to up to through 8th grade, and then went on to high school. I have an older sister and 2 older brothers. Sister's 11 years older, and then Roger, my oldest brother's 8 years older, and then Larry's 4 years older.
So you're kind of unexpected.
Kind of spread out a little bit. Not a real tight-knit family just because of everybody was in different phases, high school, grade school, kindergarten. I don't remember my sister much growing up because she was so much older.
So she didn't take a significant hand in raising you then?
No.
Okay.
My mom had the significant hand because of the situation with my prior situation with my dad. She had to take the hand and control as much as she could because there were 4 kids to raise.
So where was this in California?
We originally lived in La Puente, California, which is San Gabriel Valley, Southern California.
Okay.
That's where I grew up.
All right. So you got through high school there and graduated apparently?
Yeah, got through high school. The scenario was when I was in junior high, I was following both my older brothers, and I got to the 7th grade, and the physical education teacher said, "Oh, Richcreek, are you like Roger or are you like Larry?" And they were completely different. I said, "I'm not like either one of them." It's like, okay. So then we got to graduate. They opened up a new high school. So Larry and Roger went to one, and they opened up this new one. So you can go to that one, or you can go to the new one. I said, I'm going to make my own path. I'm going to the new one rather than following up their steps. Because again, Roger was a football player. Larry was a guitar player. Different worlds. So I went off to my own high school.
So this was in around 73 or so?
I graduated in 73 from high school.
So after high school then, how long before you went into the Navy?
I got out of high school in June and was in the Navy in August. I enlisted in April. Okay. Delayed entry program, I think they called it. I just did that.
So did you do your basic then at San Diego?
Yes.
Yeah.
San Diego. And while I was in basic training, they had the very first morning, they said, "We're looking for volunteers." And I learned later on that Navy stands for Never Again Volunteer Yourself. I didn't know it at the time. They said if you can play a musical instrument, sing, or you're at least 5'11", and you want to volunteer for something, step forward. So I was the 5'11". I couldn't sing or play, and ended up on what they called the 50 state flag team. And what that did was they would march in, do a couple of maneuvers, and then line up at the rear of the area where the graduation was taking place. After about 2 weeks, the person carrying the Delaware flag graduated, and they needed somebody to replace it. Well, the Delaware flag leads all the maneuvers. So you better have, so I went ahead and volunteered for that, again, not knowing what the Navy stood for. And did that the rest of the time I was there.
Really? The whole time you were in?
The rest of the time I was
in boot camp.
In boot camp. So for 10 weeks, that was my scenario.
Well, that was pretty good duty, wasn't it?
Yeah. And because of the flag team, we didn't have to do all of the regular marching and calisthenic kind of stuff because we had to practice. And they had to escalate, I don't know. Our basic Navy education. We went through classes faster because we skipped all that other stuff so that we could practice and be ready to do the graduation. So
did you enjoy doing that? Was it?
I did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Proud of it?
I didn't. I was proud of it that I've actually. It's the first time I think I ever volunteered to be in a leading kind of a position. It's like, Delaware, yeah, okay. You know, I knew that if I messed it up, the person in charge would pick somebody else.
Yeah.
But nobody else nobody else volunteered.
So there were 50 flags then that they had, or
Yes.
and you'd all like a platoon, whatever, just be in formation and.
Yeah, we would march pretty much in a line wherever we went.
You didn't throw them in the air and spin them or anything?
No, we didn't have anything.
No,
they didn't trust us with that. It's like these are kids. We don't want them throwing flags.
Yeah.
No, nothing fancy. I think there were a couple of crossing maneuvers we might have done just to put on a little bit of show for the families that were there for the graduations. And San Diego was a good place to do that because most of the time it was sunny and dry.
That most of the time.
Most of the time.
San Diego is a pretty beautiful spot in a lot of ways, I would think.
Yeah.
Tell me about then after basic or boot camp. Where did you go from there?
I went to basic electricity school and then went on to electrician's mate A school and learned to be an electrician's mate, which was fine because one of the reasons I went into the Navy was because I didn't want to go to college and didn't have the money to go to college. And my electronics teacher, I was trying to figure out what to do with my future. He goes, well, the Navy has the best schools. I'm like, oh, okay. So then became an electrician's mate.
And that was a good skill to learn there for sure.
Yeah, it allowed me to get access to any place on the ship unless it was a security area, security area. I just didn't have clearance for that.
So when you were finally assigned duty, then you were out on a ship then?
Yeah, I was out. The first ship that I went on to was the USS Ranger, aircraft carrier. Never seen anything that big before. And getting lost was easy to do. Luckily, they train you in boot camp how to read all the letters and numbers to figure out where you are. I still got lost a couple of times the first day.
Sure.
But that was part of the learning experience.
Well, aircraft carriers are huge. And, and excuse me, the Ranger is an older one for sure. This was back in the 70s then?
I was in the 70s. It was built in the late 50s.
So that must have been quite an experience. It wasn't a nuclear, obviously, at that time. There was,
no. At that time, the Enterprise was the only nuclear.
Yeah, I don't have much recollection of those things, but not being Navy and all that.
Yeah.
But, anyway, I certainly am familiar with both the Ranger and the Enterprise for sure. Mm-hmm. It's like, but the Ranger had its own illustrious history, did it not?
Not that I was ever told
really?
about.
Okay.
I just know the history while I was on it. I mean,
you made history while you were there?
My history.
Yeah, right. What about, were you in Vietnam? Did you go over there?
It was the Vietnam era.
Okay.
So the cruise we went on was a 6-month cruise. Hit Hawaii, hit the Philippines several times. We were supposed to go to Hong Kong for an R&R, and we were on our way, and then they came over this loudspeaker system and said, we're delaying our trip to Hong Kong because President Nixon resigned and we anticipate a push by the enemy. And I'm like, the war was officially over before I enlisted. What are you guys talking about? And so from what I heard, I never made it up to the flight deck. From what I heard, they loaded all the planes. They all took off. This all happened at night. And the people on the flight deck reported seeing orange glows. And some of the planes came back with a little bit of damage. They were there overnight and then headed off to Hong Kong. I was like, enemy, what are you talking about? What happened while I was sleeping last night? But anyway, so that was a little side trip. It's like, okay, it's military, who knows?
A parting shot there, kind of thing.
I guess that's what it was.
Oh, that's interesting. In Hong Kong, how was Hong Kong?
Hong Kong was amazing. I'd never really traveled anywhere.
Yeah. And
so we were only there for 2 days. I think I had 2 days off to go into town. The first night, somebody told me about a place called Kowloon, and because I was wanting to get some, experience authentic cuisine. And so I said, oh, we're going to Kowloon. So I found a place where I got an authentic 7-course Chinese meal, complete with the dragon dancing show, but I only had chopsticks. It's hard to eat when you've never had chopsticks in your hand. And you've got to eat all this stuff. I could do lettuce. And I think sometimes I would just like put the 2, one in each end. It was good, you know, and that was a fun thing.
I'll bet. So you're around 18 or 19 years old at that time.
Yeah. Yeah. And then the next day I went to a place called, it's in my notes, Victoria Peak Gardens, which is on the top of the Hong Kong island. And it was a very beautiful garden. And I could look down in the harbor and see the Ranger parked down there. So it was very cool. And so I took lots of pictures and got back to the ship and turned my film into the photo lab and went back the next day to pick it up. And they went, we're sorry, your film got exposed accidentally. So I have no actual pictures. I got these pictures up here.
Right.
And I was like, really? Because there was a lot on there. And back then it wasn't like we have phones now where you can keep track of your own stuff. It was gone. The memories are still there.
Yeah. So Jeff, did you do a full 4-year hitch then? Or?
Yes. So,
okay. What other kind of sea duty did you have there?
When I got back from the cruise on the Ranger, back step a little bit, I got married just before we left on the Ranger. So when I came back, I decided I didn't want to be gone again. And there was a Kitty Hawk was parked next door down in San Diego. And I just did what they called a swap. There was another person with the same rate, same amount of time left. He wanted to go back on cruises and get out of the States. I didn't, so it was a perfect swap. So I stayed on the Kitty Hawk the rest of my time in there, doing the same type of work, electrician.
So is the Kitty Hawk still commissioned?
Neither one of them are commissioned.
Neither one, yeah. And mothballed them both or whatever.
Mothballed and scrapped, yeah.
No,
they're both gone.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Looked okay to me.
Transience of all things, you know?
Yeah.
Like, that's amazing. So, so you worked primarily as an electrician then during this whole time?
Yeah.
And when you got out then, did that translate into a career?
Well, that was my hope, because when I was on the Kitty Hawk, we did a 13-month overhaul in dry dock. If your carriers are big, but when they're out of the water and you can see top to bottom, it's crazy. And when one of your jobs I was in the flight deck lighting department, and one of the jobs I got to do was replace the aircraft warning light at the top of the mast. So I was up there looking all the way down to the bottom of the dry dock going, this is really big.
You had to climb all the way up to that thing.
Climb all the way up there, yeah. And I said, I hope we never have to change these lights when we're at sea, because then you'll be doing this up at the top. It's like, but it was cool. So yeah, that was 13 months in there. And then I got out. I mean, I did the aircraft warning or the flight deck lighting shop. And then part of the time I was in the motor rewind shop. We just took the big motors from this size to motors this size, pulled them apart and fixed them. You know, especially the fire pump motors, those have to keep working. So we have fire mean pressure. So there were a lot of times like, it just went out. Now we're down to 6 instead of 8. You need to go down. You guys need to go down there and get the one that's sitting on the deck and get it down in there and get it set in place and get it fired up. Like, so you sleep when it's done. Okay, that works for me.
So you were married during this time, and was your wife there in San Diego with you?
She was initially. She lived with her parents. Well, no, yeah, she was in San Diego.
Okay.
She lived in Imperial Beach.
Okay.
Which is it's connected by a road up to.
So
sorry about that.
That's okay. It'll be fine. It looks wobbly, but it'll
okay. I promise. Connected to a road to Coronado Island where the carriers were parked.
In Coronado.
Docked.
Yeah. So you would sort of commute then to work every day. It just became sort of a job. Yeah. That's kind of interesting. It's like
straight up. Part of that strand, that's what it's called. It's called the Imperial Strand. Part of it is where the SEAL training base was. So
that's right. They were down there as well. SEALs in Coronado. I remember that. I actually spent a little time. I was assigned to Little Creek out in Virginia, which is where they also do SEAL training there. we shared the same mess hall with them, you know. Anyway,
Yeah.
I was Army, and you can imagine
Mm-hmm.
conflicts that would arise out of that whole thing.
Yeah.
Anyway, long story. Like, what about, do you have any particularly vivid memories from your experience in the military?
Have some fun memories. When I was getting ready to enlist, I talked to my older brother who'd been in the Navy. He went to SEAL school, decided he didn't want to be a SEAL anymore. And if you know the stories about SEALs, if you want to quit, you have to go ring a bell. Well, he told his commander, he says, I'm not going to ring the bell. I'm not quitting because it's too hard. I'm quitting because I've decided I want to spend my time in the Navy helping people, not killing people. So his commander said, well, I'll just fix you, Richcreek, and send him off to corpsman school, which he was loved. And he ended up doing 2 tours in country in Vietnam as a corpsman. So I look up to him a lot because I can imagine that was like.
You survived to tell the tale.
He survived to tell the tale, yeah.
Oh, God.
Yeah. And then one of the funny things I remember, one time the air wing came aboard the ship. I think trips we were taking out to let them practice landing and taking off.
Yeah.
And we called them Airedales. Well, I'm an electrician, so we're in charge of the lighting and everything else. And we got a call from one of the spaces where the Airedales were. And they said, our lights don't work. You guys need to get down here right away, because they thought they were in charge, even though we were. It's our ship. You're just visiting. So I go to the space where they are, and I flashlight, and I look in, and there's like 10 or 12 guys sitting there. I'm like, oh, okay. And I turned to my left a little bit, stepped in and turned to my left a little bit, put the flashlight on the light switch and turned it on. And then I turned and watched the expressions on their faces. I'm like, whoa, I go, so to myself, I said, you guys are in charge of those very expensive aircraft. And you can't find, 12 of you can't find the light switch right inside the door. Okay, that's fine. We'll see you later. So that was my experiences with those guys.
That's a really funny story. That's like how many navigator or whatever pilots does it take
Yeah,
to
it's like
turn on a
there's
light
12 of you,
switch?
and you turn the lights, I can't find the light
Something
switch.
like
Don't you guys come with flashlights?
That's funny.
Yeah. And then I had another time where I was dealing with those folks again, and my job at the time was the electrical safety shop. We issued tools, power tools, drills,
Sure.
that kind of stuff. And the rule was you have to bring it back by 8 o'clock the next morning if you want to, so we can make sure it's still functioning safely, because you're surrounded by metal and you don't play with metal and electricity. You want them to make sure they're working right. So the guy brought it back at 9, and I said, okay, well, I need it now. I got it worked. I said, no, ship regulations, 8 o'clock, by 8 o'clock. We open at 7. So he was not a happy Airedale. And then he went down. A few minutes later, I got a call from his commander. You're going to give it to him now. I was like, I can't do that, sir. The regulations say he has to have it back by 8. I can issue it to him tomorrow. Well, I didn't. And so he was doing a pulling rank kind of thing because he was a commander. And I was like an E3 at the time. And then little did I know, my first class electrician that was in charge of us at E6 was on the phone listening. So he said, excuse me, Commander, Richcreek is right. These are the regulations. If you'd like, I can arrange it for you to come meet with our division officer, and then we can all go and talk to the captain about this, because it's the captain's rule. Oh, okay, never mind. So it's like just doing my job, and so that was fun with the Airedales.
Well,
Yeah.
kind of nice to stick it to a commander a little bit.
I think I did say at one. I was close to being getting out, because I remember saying specifically, "Sir, it's because of officers like you, sir, that I have 7 days left in your Navy, sir." You got to say those sirs. You had nothing to say. It's like, because I was right, and he had no place to go with it. Anyway, I enjoyed being in there, but that was an enjoyable moment too.
So insubordination was kind of a specialty. You did it in a very nuanced way there, kind of
I
thing.
did it with the sirs, and that's all they care. Don't raise your voice, and make sure you say sir.
That's funny. That's funny. That's like, so what do you think was the best part of your service experience?
The best experience within there was the Hong Kong trip.
Mm-hmm.
But the best part of being in the Navy was I learned how to follow the orders, and I learned how to be I got promoted, so I was in charge of other people, which was good because it was easy to say, you've got to go do this, because I was told we got to get it done. And if I got flack from anybody, it was easy just to go to my E6 and say, so-and-so doesn't want to do this.
No.
And then I was off the hook. But I didn't have any, all the guys that I worked with were good guys. They worked hard. I asked them about their background. There's one guy said, I'm in the Navy because the judge said it's the Navy or jail. I'm like, I'm gonna keep an eye on you. I didn't ask him why. Just, okay, keep an eye on him. But, he was a good guy. They were all good guys. Yeah, so that was it. And how can I forget about this? Being on the aircraft carrier at sea and watching the planes take off and land was amazing, because I could go up there after work if they were flying and do it during the day or at night. And at the time we had the F-14 Tomcat that everybody knows from Top Gun.
Sure.
That was there. That was a crazy, amazing plane to watch it swing its wings out and stuff. And then we had the F-4 Phantoms, which were huge. And every time they landed, and I mean every time they landed, they'd catch the resting cable, which is what you're supposed to do. They'd roll, they'd come to a complete stop, and then as soon as they would back up, that cable would hit the deck and break every single time. So I think that plane maxed out the cables pretty much. And then we had the A6 Intruders, and then we had the AWAC, which looked funny because it had a big dome on top. It was a radar plane. So
they could fly one of those off of a carrier?
They did.
Really? I didn't realize that.
Launched them and landed them, yeah.
I mean, that's almost a bomber-sized kind of plane, is it not?
Yes, it was huge.
No.
And then we had a couple of helicopters in case somebody didn't make it back on the deck.
Huh. That's really interesting. So, were you awarded any medals?
No, just
citations.
Just the only thing I got was the one you get for doing 4 years.
Yeah.
No medals or citations. No disciplinary actions either.
No disciplinary.
Nope,
that was my next question exactly. Article 15s or whatever.
Nope.
Did they call them that in the Navy?
I don't know what they called them. I only knew one person that ever went to the brig, and that's because he wasn't getting along with a warrant officer.
Oh.
And on the ship, the ladders are about this wide.
No.
Well, he started to go up when the warrant officer was coming down, and he bumped shoulders, and he ended up in the brig for assaulting an officer. I'm like, but he'd already been having challenges with that particular individual anyway.
Well, okay. How about after the service then? What occupations did you have?
Initially, when I got out of the service, I'm still in Bremerton, Washington, where the shipyard was. That we'd already spent 13 months so I got out and I tried to get a job working for the shipyard as an electrician. I know what I'm doing. It should be an easy transition. It would have been, except in that time frame, the 70s, there was a lot of what they were back then, they called it affirmative action. So if you were a white male, they already had enough of those in all the unions. So I couldn't get a job in Bremerton. They said, you can join the union, but you're going to have to go live in Eastern Washington for like 4 or 5 years till there's an opening over here. So I went, I'm not moving over there. I have a friend over there. I know how nice and dry and flat that is. I don't like that. So I got a job in town at a hardware store in the electrical department, amongst other things, and spent a couple of years up there.
Did you use your GI Bill or anything?
I have attempted to use it a couple of times, but every time I went to college, something happened. I either got bored or because, like I said in the beginning, I didn't want to go to college.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I learned to trade. So I just made a couple of attempts over the years to try to use it.
So as far as, a career then, is there anything in particular then that did you work at this hardware store then?
I just worked there a couple of years till my second daughter was born, and she was born with a heart defect. And we ended up moving to California just because the hardware store wasn't supporting 4 people. We went down there, and her dad helped me get a job with the phone company down in California.
With a what kind?
He helped me get a job with a subscription television company. Back then, when subscription table was not like what we have now. It was an antenna and a box and maybe 2 or 3 channels that they got. And that's where I worked up until I saw that company starting to close because I was doing more disconnects than installs because the rest of technology for television
Evolving,
streaming
right.
stuff was evolving. So I ended up going to work for the phone company, which is, they just, oh, you got a job at the phone company. You got a job for life. That's how good that is. Union and everything. I'm like, okay. And then 6 months into that is when I fell and broke my back and got paralyzed.
You want to talk about that? Can we talk about that?
Yeah.
What happened?
Well, let me backtrack just a little bit. My daughter that was born with a heart defect.
Right.
6 months into it, when she was born that way, they said most of the kids that are born this way, it closes on its own. So we didn't worry about it.
Mhm.
Well, she wasn't getting old. She wasn't growing. She wasn't gaining weight. She ended up having to have open heart surgery at the age just shy of 6 months old in December. So she had that done. She was fine. We went home that night, got up the next morning to call because her mom was supplying her breast milk to her. They said, how soon can you guys get in here? She's jumping off the table. She needs to eat. Jumping off the tables. It was just their description. It was a hospital table. But anyway, so I said, well, it'll be a couple hours. We're going to go take our other daughter, get a Christmas tree. Christmas tree lights were closed. We came back home. I called them and said, hey, just want to let you know you're not going to be heading out there just to bring April her milk pretty soon. It's like, okay. And the nurse replied back, if you want to see your daughter alive, you need to be here in the next 20 minutes. What? What happened? Well, I can't tell you any more than that. So apparently something happened overnight or in that short time frame where she stopped breathing on her own. They didn't catch it because the nurses were overworked. And so she got lack of oxygen for about an hour. That did the brain damage. So that's that experience. And then 6 months later, we're still dealing with that. 6 months later is when I broke my back. So we had a lot going on right then. And so when I was in rehab, first thing I asked them when I got to the rehab hospital after I got to the regular hospital, I says, how fast can I get home? And they said, well, 12 weeks is the fastest anybody's ever done it. I said, I'm going to shoot for that. Tell me what I need to do. And luckily I was in a rehab hospital that had 2 hours of PT and 2 hours of OT 5 days a week. So I could just keep, and on the weekends I do, stuff like that. But so that was that, and then went home and tried to figure out what we could do for her.
That must have been an extraordinarily difficult time for you.
Yeah.
And your family.
Yes, I couldn't do anything. We didn't know what to do for our daughter because that brain damage made her blind and deaf. And at 6 months, they haven't even begun to try to talk. So you'd try to hold her and she'd scream because she couldn't see you and touch you, and there's no hearing, so she didn't know what was going on. So it was a challenging time. And then breaking my back.
Okay. So how did you happen to break your back then?
I was working for the phone company. I was up on a ladder working over another open space. I had what they call the false ceilings, the ones with the tiles. And the area was clear in the morning, but somebody had decided to fill the area we were working in with a bunch of stuff, so it was a little bit trickier. So I had 1 foot on the ladder and 1 foot on the edge of the wall. It was about that wide.
No.
And for whatever reason, I lost my balance. I fell in towards that false ceiling, and I'm left-handed, and there's a cable here that I could have grabbed on, but for whatever reason, I reached with my right hand. That turned me around, and when I went down through the ceiling, I hit the edge of a table at the waist and broke my back. So that's, went to work one day and came home 6 months later, basically.
And did this, if it was a spinal cord injury?
Spinal cord injury, yeah.
Okay.
T11, which is basically your belly button.
Right.
Yeah.
Dear God, that's so you've been in this chair then since that time?
Yeah, it'll be 44 years so far. Yeah.
So how has that worked out for you in your life then, as far as work and family and all these things?
Work, it's been okay. I mean, I got hurt on the job. They didn't have technology to give me a desk job of equal pay, so they wouldn't let me go back to work until they did. Luckily, technology caught up, and I was able to do a desk job, technical kind of work. 3 years after the injury, the woman I was married to decided she wanted a divorce. And, you know, sometimes you'll hear somebody say something, you never forget those words. I want a divorce and I'm tired of living a handicapped lifestyle. And I looked at her, I said, well, I can't do anything about this. So got divorced. 2 years later, about a year later, I met my wife now. We've been together for 39 years. And we met because she moved from Colorado to California.
Mhm.
She was a Olympic hopeful in the women's discus, which I didn't even know.
Discus,
Yeah, I
really?
didn't even know what a discus was. I ran track in high school, but we didn't have that, so I didn't know what it was. I had to go look it up. Well, about a couple weeks before I met her, my season track and field tickets for the '84 Los Angeles Olympics had arrived. Because I'm like, I'm 40 minutes from the Coliseum. I'm not going to miss this. Back then, the tickets were $300 for 7 days of track and field. I think one event now is probably $600.
Wow.
So I met my wife. She told me why she was in California. So I said, well, said, do you need somebody to take you to the track meets? Because you're from Colorado and I'm from Southern California. I know where the schools are. Oh yeah. So that's how we started our friendship. And then it grew beyond that. I ended up getting, from a scalper at the Coliseum, I got her tickets to the women's discus final because she didn't make the team. She didn't make the team. There's discus throwers are much bigger normally than my wife. She's only 5'9", about 180 pounds, and the rest of them were 6 foot and above and
Sure.
2 something. So I got her so she knew the women that were going to be in the finals that made the team. So I surprised her with that ticket to the women's discus final, and she got to go watch them. She got to be there at the Olympics, and yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure she was thrilled.
She was.
Yeah.
And she tried for 4 more years and worked with an Olympic coach and a 2-time Olympian, and she got to the finals, or she got to the trials and didn't make the team, which she was hoping. But again, when they bring the athletes out, they bring them tallest to shortest, and she was at the back. She was at the end of the line, but she gave it her all. And the Olympic coach that she was working with said, Fran, you're as good as you can possibly be. You're as strong as you can be. Your technique is perfect. The only way you can be any better is to go off into the realm of enhancement substances. And she's like,
Right.
I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
So she moved on from there. It's like, well, we've taken it as far as your size will let you go.
Yeah, that's remarkable.
But she asked questions before we got married about me being in the chair. She goes, well, what about this and what about that? One of the big questions I'm glad she asked was, if I want to do something with my friends that you can't physically do, is that going to be a problem? I said, no. You need to go. You are you and I am me. And, you know, if there's something you want to go do with your friends that I can't do, that's fine. Go do it. You know? So that has come up a lot over the 39 years, or she's had the chance to go do something that I couldn't do. So go. But we've also learned how to go skiing at her encouragement, because she grew up here in Colorado and she knew about the different programs we hear. So I did learn how to sit ski first and then mono ski. Haven't done that for a long time just because it was fun to do, but not something I wanted to continue doing a lot of. So she's opened some doors, and you know, it's good. It's been great.
So you were able to, a lot of questions there. It's like, in terms of at the telephone company, then, did you make your career there?
I was there until, and remember earlier I said, oh, you got a job at the phone company? You got a job for life.
Right.
No. Technology advanced from the position they got me into to the point where they didn't need us, as many of us anymore.
Yeah.
And I went ahead and ended up getting laid off. Like a severance package, got laid off. And then tried to do some entrepreneurial stuff on my own for a while. That didn't work. And then ended up working for an alarm company out in California that got bought by a company here in Colorado. And then so we moved to Colorado.
And your wife, did she also work then?
She was a substitute teacher
Okay.
in California. And she said, and then she came to California. When I got the offer to come to Colorado with the company that bought the company I had in California. At the same time, one of the people she grew up with called her and said, my teacher's assistant is quitting and I want you to come here and work with me.
Mm-hmm.
And she says, I've already told the athletic director about your background with discus throwing and Olympics and all that stuff. And he said, so he wants to meet you too. So she got a job over at Eagle Crest High School in Aurora as a teacher's assistant and a throwing coach.
Yeah, I would think she could be a coach for sure.
Yeah, and she loved working with the kids and that whole thing. So that's, and then I've been working for that pretty much the same company since in the alarm industry. They've been bought and sold and bought and sold.
Yeah.
I haven't gone anywhere. So that's where
So
we're
are you
at.
retired now or?
Nope,
Still working?
still working.
Good on you.
I lived life, so I didn't save for
Right.
retirement. I
Sure.
mean, got a 401k and that kind of stuff, but it's like the last 4 years since the pandemic, I've been working from home. The job's easy,
No.
location's perfect, you know, so I do that. And my wife's therapeutic massage therapist. She's been doing that for 20 years now, has her
Really?
own practice.
Okay.
So if I have issues with a shoulder or something,
She can work on it.
she'll just come right up and start digging in, and I'll start speaking different languages from the amount of pain she inflicts. And when she's done, it's all better.
So no, that's great. That's wonderful. I have one other question regarding your ex-wife and the daughter,
Mhm.
that had all those difficulties there. What happened with her then?
We ended up suing the hospital. She got a settlement. That all happened after we were divorced, so I wasn't involved with all the details, but I knew the generals of it. And her settlement basically was a certain amount of money, and every year it went up 10%.
Mm-hmm.
She lived to be 21, so she went from being, I think this lawsuit, she might have been 2 at the time, by the time it all got settled. So she went all that time, and she passed away when she was 21. I don't know the details.
Sure.
My older daughter says there was questionable scenarios. She was in the hospital when it happened. So, yeah.
Well, anyway, it's great that they at least got some kind of settlement out of that,
Yeah.
And it's like it certainly was a difficult thing for all of you, I'm sure,
Yeah.
and incredibly so. What about your older daughter then? Do you have any contact with her?
Yeah, we have a great relationship now. There was a long period after the divorce where her mom, we're in California, so because she had to stay in the state.
Mm-hmm.
But she moved. We lived in Huntington Beach at the time, which is Southern California, and they moved up near Sacramento.
Okay.
Really hard to see your daughter on once a week and every other weekend when she's a 9-hour drive away.
Right.
So that just didn't happen for a long time. I called her when I could. Every year she got a birthday card from me with all of this is where I am, this is my phone number. If you need anything, let me know. And then apparently at some point when she was in high school, her mom kicked her out. Or I don't know why, I didn't bother to find out. And she called me because I said in the cards, call me if ever. And she said, I need some money. Mom kicked me out and I'm staying with some friends and I feel bad about staying with them and not, contributing or not, they're feeding me. And so I said, sure, whatever you need. And then we finally officially reconnected when my other daughter, April, passed away.
Okay.
She called me. Actually, her husband called me. She said, this is Nick. You don't know who I am. I'm married to your daughter, Jenny. She was afraid to talk to you on the phone, but we need to let you know that April passed away. I said, okay. I have a problem with what you're telling me because a year ago in writing, I got something from her mom that said she was gone. So you're telling me she wasn't. Okay, and I said, let's put Jenny on the phone. And we talked and we reconnected that way. And they were in Vegas at the time and we were in Southern California. So we reconnected that way. And she's got three kids that are grandkids of mine. 2 of them, the older boys, one was in the Air Force and the other one still is. And then the daughter's being a young woman.
Yeah, God, that's like,
Yeah.
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 Life has its challenges, doesn't it?
That's why I tell people, I said, it's not a, if you think it's a problem, it's because you're focusing on the problem. Whatever the problem is, look for the solution.
Right,
Because you stick in the problem, you're not going to get anywhere.
right.
Just
That's true.
whatever the solution is. So people say, let me do that for you. I know you can't do that. I'm like, if I can't do something, it's because I've already tried. Or it's obvious, like going upstairs.
No.
You know, things like that. I had an incident a couple of weeks ago out picking up a pizza. And I've been picking up pizza at this place for a long time, and the orders are like stacked up. And I always have this big bag to carry it out so I don't drop it on my way out. And I'm reaching for my pizza, and this guy comes over, I'll help you. I said, no, I got it. Thank you. I don't got it. He did anyway. And then the pizza, if it wasn't for the bag that I had, the pizza would have ended up on the floor because he was grabbing it while I was grabbing it. And then he proceeded after that to cuss me out in the store and out in the parking lot. I'm like, go home, just go home and enjoy your pizza. Because I don't know what the rest of that was about. Pizza was fine, and I don't know yet. So yeah, so I don't do can't unless it's like obvious. You know, my wife says, do you want me to get that for you? I said, no, let me try. I know you put it on the top shelf, but I have grabbers, and if I can't, then come do it. Yeah.
And you say 44 years now. How old were you when you broke your back?
24.
24.
68. I'll be 69 in April.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, God, that's like, again, the challenges we each in our own way. You know, we have our own little row to hoe there, but it's like some are certainly more challenging than others. That's for damn sure in different ways. I can certainly appreciate that. So, so you have hobbies? What about hobbies? Do you have any hobbies?
Two things that I like to take pictures, and I love technology because you can take all the pictures you want. And you don't have to worry about how to film. It's just I don't even know. I've got like 10,000 photos on my phone or something like that. So I like to take pictures. That makes it easier. My wife makes fun of me. She came home one day and she's like, what are you doing? This was like 20 years ago. She says, what are you doing? I said, I'm watching the clouds. Because Colorado has clouds that form and build and move. Southern California, the clouds were a bank that came in. That wasn't where I grew up anywhere. And in Huntington Beach, it was just a bank would come in. So now I refer to spring as cloud season. And I go out and take pictures of clouds, and just because there's never two clouds that are the same.
Right.
It's like, oh, okay. And then people comment like, oh, that's a cool one. And I don't try to identify them. That's a dog, and that's a,
So do you do mostly smartphone photography, or do you get in like a camera? Do you have a DSLR?
I just have the smartphone. I had a regular camera for a long time and didn't use it that much.
Okay.
But this is easy because you can edit it all right there in this little square.
So you like to edit your stuff as well?
Yeah, I mean, some of the pictures are, they're clouds, so they're way off. So you got to zoom in and try to mess with them.
That's your favorite subject to work with?
It seems to be, yeah. I mean, I'll do people, but I can't do as much with people. Every project that we do in our house,
you'll document.
I document that from the beginning. My wife decided last weekend she wanted to paint the kitchen, but she has to clean the walls and then clean a cleaner off the walls and then start painting. So I've got that going, and it's not done yet, but I've got the pictures all along because that's what I do. We've had other repair work done to the house, and I've taken a picture of before and during and after, just so it's all there. But
that's a good thing to do that. I think that's a great idea.
It's like so the only other hobby I have is I like to write.
Oh, really? Tell me about that.
For years I've been attempting to write a book about my life with these stories, and I always get distracted and put it off, and then it's still in the works. On my computer, I've got like 12 chapters started, all with their own different names, and a couple of different names for the book that once I get it done, it keeps changing. And I don't know if you believe in people that have passed on communicating with you, but we came out one night from a movie called Spiderwick Chronicles, and while I was waiting for my wife to get to the car, I heard the voice of my daughter, April, which is interesting because I never heard her speak. But I felt it was from her. And she says, "You really need to finish that book." It's still not done. But,
You really need to finish that.
I really need to finish that book. And then this opportunity came along. So I'm like talking the book. I'll still eventually write it down, but at least now this format is here.
Well, writing is more than challenging. Like sitting there opening a vein and letting it just sort of flow out there, but it's opening that vein and the pain and all the kind of stuff that has to sort of go along with it in terms of getting it up and out in that way, for sure, Could be very therapeutic in its own way, though. I'm sure,
it has been.
In terms of just
on the writing, it has
processing a lot of stuff there,
getting it out, just like this, getting stuff out.
And again, that whole period that you went through there when she was first born, and then your fall, and those are obviously life-changing experience and that profoundly affect you, the rest of your life. I certainly can appreciate that for sure. So it's like, well, I hope you get back to your writing at some point with that. That's like
I just have to discipline myself to do it. It's like
when you're ready, it's like
when I was writing I wrote all the answers to these questions. And then I went, wait a minute. And I picked up my phone and opened up the notes and turned the microphone on and read through all of this. And now I have it in 2 formats. If I need to use any of it for the book, it's like, oh, it's already right there. Another chapter that I have on my computer. It's this whole thing.
So I was just going to ask you about what is an amazing once-in-a-lifetime life experience that you had outside of the military service, although that one with your daughter sounds pretty... anything that...
Lifetime experience. It just had to when my oldest daughter was born, this is 76. Back then, Lamaze classes for natural childbirth were a new thing.
Right.
And so we took the classes. And then, so I was ready when I was allowed to be in the delivery room when Jenny was born, which was amazing. And then the doctor we had, Naval Hospital, so the doctor that we had was not a popular doctor. Every time the women came in for their checkups, as soon as the nurse walked away, they would take the folder and put it in any other doctor's file. That's how much they didn't like this guy. Like, so the day Jenny's going to be born, who has the duty? This doctor. So I'm like, okay, there's nothing we can do. Let's go ahead. Well, apparently he loves that part of the job, the delivery. And so when Jenny was born and they had her all wrapped up, the doctor says to the nurse, hand the daughter to dad so he can take her to the nursery. And I was like, so I had to carry my daughter from the delivery room to the nursery. And that was amazing. And I talked to her a little bit, on the way over, I am your dad. Right. So that was like the most amazing thing. And the other amazing thing was when my wife and I, Fran, we were given a gift of a hot air balloon for our wedding. So me and my chair and the wife, I said, how am I going to get in the basket? Because the basket's like this high. How am I going to get in there? One guy held me and the other one put the chair in and got me in there, and we got to go up in a hot air balloon.
That must have been an extraordinary experience.
So those are the 2 like really amazing scenarios, stories.
I think that would be a very pleasurable kind of thing to do that. I've never had that experience, but I could see how it would be.
It's very quiet, except when they have to give it some gas. And
Was this in California?
No, it was here in Colorado.
Colorado.
Yeah, we got married here in Colorado.
Well, that's great.
Yeah.
Glad for you. So let's see. What about life lessons you learned from the military or military experience?
The lesson I learned is do what you're told. You can be independent. You just have to kind of get permission to be. I learned how to get along with people that I'd never met before. Boot camp is you and 49 other strangers. Nobody knows anybody, so you had to learn how to get along. And with people that way. You got to the ship, it was another group of people you've never met.
Oh,
So that was a big lesson to learn how to be good to other people. You know, everybody's got their background. Have fun along the way. It's pretty much was the big lesson is, you know.
so is there anything that you miss about your experience in the service?
I miss watching the planes take off and land.
Yeah.
And there's nothing more beautiful to me in nature than a sunset over the open ocean.
No.
Got to see a lot of those. It's like, oh, I'm done working. Because there's nothing to detract from it. And when it's down, it's just all you have is the stars. There's no air, no light pollution out in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. Yeah.
No, I'm sure that's a pretty extraordinary experience as well, yeah, for sure.
And it was cool to watch the planes. Yeah.
So anything you're glad to have left behind?
I don't have any regrets as far as my time in there. Originally, before I got married, I was going to do 20 years, but I didn't. I don't have regrets of getting out because my priority at that point was being with the woman I was married to and my daughter. So I wanted to get out that.
Sure.
That's why I got out, to spend time with them. This family is just too important.
Well, so what do you wish more people knew, meaning civilians, about veterans and or military service?
It was an honor to be in the Navy, serve. I told you a little bit about my brother's story. So you're going to go in, if you choose to serve, then you're going to choose to make the sacrifices that go along with it. In my case, there weren't really big sacrifices. People in other branches during other times had much bigger sacrifices, and they all relate to that differently. But I just, it's like I said, it was an honor for me to serve. I learned a lot about myself and other people. I tried to encourage both of my grandsons to join the Navy. One of them just made a snap decision, went into the Air Force. And I talked to the other one, the younger one, and he said, okay, I'll think about it, because he's kind of an analytical kid. Then he called me back and he's like, Grandpa Jeff, I just can't see myself out in the middle of the ocean and not be able to see land. So I'm going with the Air Force. I said, okay, at least you thought about it and looked into it.
Yeah.
So that's what they're doing. Military service, like I said, it takes sacrifices of different kinds, and you get rewards of different kinds. The biggest thing between the military that I was in and the rest of the world is if you did what you were told, you knew what the outcome would be. And if you didn't, you knew what the outcome would be. There were no politics. Do this and you're good. There wasn't any, you didn't have to deal with, people trying to impress someone and be political. That order is an order.
I wanted to ask you too about your older brother there, the medic, the corpsman, whatever. How did he survive that pretty well? He got through it okay?
As far as I know, physically, yes.
Yeah.
He never talked about it.
Mm-hmm.
We were told when he was in, what he told my mom was that he was on board the USS Sanctuary, a hospital ship off the coast of Vietnam.
Okay.
That was not true. He was in country with the 1st Marine Division,
Right.
doing what he needed to do there. And his SEAL training is what saved his life and the lives of the people that he was able to save. Because most people, when you hear somebody yelling that they need a medic, my understanding is most of the medics would go, boom, over there and get him.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's what the enemy was expecting, so they'd take out the medic.
Right.
So my brother, because of his time with the SEALs, he'd hear where they were and he'd go this way and then go over that way and then get to them and then get them out. And that's how he was able to do it, because he knew how to not go where the enemy's pointed already.
Well, I was thinking that as a corpsman, and they went with the Marines, obviously, as you were saying, that 1st Marine Division, and they really caught a lot of hell over there in Nam. And, so anyway, that's certainly could have been a very traumatic experience.
His oldest son told us that piece
Yeah.
that I just shared, because we didn't know it.
Yeah.
When we showed up at his funeral, His oldest son told us about it.
Okay, so he's no longer here.
No,
living?
it's been about 10 years or so.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's amazing. So, in the remainder of your family, the kids that your sisters and brother, are you the last surviving one, or?
No, my sister's still here.
Okay.
My brother Larry, who's 4 years older than me, passed away on January 1st this year. So it's still a little emotional for that, because we used to talk like once a month. I'd give him a call. He lived up in Washington State and that kind of stuff. So it's just me and my older sister. And she's told me some stories, like the story about why we moved to California from Arizona.
No.
She told me that. I'm like, okay. Family stories she knows because she's 11 years older, and I think she was like 12 or 13 when all that was going on. So she remembered it. But yeah.
Well, it's good that she's still around, that you're in communication.
She'll be 80 in July.
Yeah.
And I told my wife, I said, we need to go for her 80th birthday, because her birthday and our wedding date are the same.
Oh, really? Okay.
And my wife's like, she lives in Phoenix. So yeah, her birthday is on July 27th.
It's only
Really want to go to 120? No, but it's her 80th birthday, so we haven't made that decision. One of the benefits that I've got that I didn't know, one of the big things that I got a few years back was I didn't know that everything I need for living in a wheelchair, I assumed none of it was covered by the VA because it didn't happen. It's not service connected. And I was out at Washington Park here in Denver. They had some guys doing hand cycles. And I wanted to learn how to do that. I said, oh, this would be cool. So I got in the hand cycle. The guy that I was working was showing me around. Dave, he's another veteran. He was like, he asked me, are you service connected? No, I'm not. He goes, have you ever heard of the PVA? I'm like, no. I go, what's that? He goes, Paralyzed Veterans of America. He goes, I'll give you the contact information and you reach out to them. He goes, and there's a chance all of this might be covered by the VA. I'm like, no, it's worth looking into.
Sure.
So about 8 years ago, I think it was about 8 years ago, I went through that process, and now everything is covered. So I don't have to worry about the cost of a new wheelchair, which they start at $5,000. At least that's the last time I bought one, they did, and everything. So that organization has helped me a lot. And at one point in time, I was on the board of directors. I guess that's what it's called, for the local chapter, the Mountain Stage chapter.
That's so great. I'm really glad for you. But disability did not come along with that, or?
I got disability from the injury from the phone company.
Okay.
But the laws in California, because we did a third-party lawsuit to try to get something from the building owners where I fell, and we got that money, and then the workman's comp company in California said, great, if you want to keep us covering you, we need, and California law allowed it, we need to recoup the money we've already spent on you. If I would have gone that route, that money that they'd already spent would have left me with $5,000. So I'm like, no, that's okay, because I was already back to work, so I already had insurance.
Yeah.
So I did, so yeah.
Yeah.
So disability, no, and then now's the way the laws are. If you go back to work after disability, like I did, well, you're able to work. You're not eligible for disability at all unless something major changes. Because I had to look into that a while back. But I'm very happy that the PVA came along and that the VA is here, especially this new place. It's really cool.
Sure.
And they've got a dedicated spinal cord injury unit. Those people are wonderful and amazing and offer me things, and I'm like, oh, sure, I'll try that.
That's great. I'm really glad to hear that for you. That's well, and in the VA, they've been a real godsend for me. I'm sure it sounds like for you as well. Yeah, that's great. So, is there any message you'd like to leave for future generations regarding who will view this interview and kind of your legacy or anything that you do?
I hope you enjoy it. I hope maybe there was a little laughter in there once in a while. I hope I got that in there. Because like they say, life's too serious to be serious all the time.
Yeah.
But watch it, listen to it, If you learn something from it, great. Just remember, you've got your story and you've got your life, and there's a lot of it you can control. And when something comes along that you can't control, reach out if you can, reach in because you always should, and then move on. Don't look at problems, look at solutions to them, because it's a lot more fun. And there'll be times when there's no solution, like still can't go upstairs, no matter how much I want to. It just doesn't work. But they have a power chair called an iBot that climbs stairs. I tried one out, but I mean, they're just, you got to understand that the limitation, whether you're fully able-bodied or not, there's going to be limitations, but just don't let them stop you.
Sage advice. So is there anything, Jeff, that you would like to add that we've not covered so far in this interview?
I don't think so. I wanted to make sure the PBA section got in there. I'm glad you guys are doing this kind of thing, because now I don't have to worry about writing the book so much.
Yeah. Doesn't count, Jeff.
I've got a niece that's in the sports world, and she's going to come over in April and do something similar. It's going to be more focused about just the family and my relationship with the brother that recently passed away and the other brother. But that's a scenario. And then this opportunity came along. I'm like, yeah, I'll do this. So
that'd be great.
Thank you.
One thing I want to say, you want to share your picture here of one of your recruits, seaman there?
Yeah.
If you would hold that up and and push it out this way here towards the camera.
Okay, this is a picture of me in it was the uniform the Navy had in the early 70s. We all referred to it as the milkman uniform. Because if you've ever seen a milkman from the old days, they wore white and they wore a hat just like that. It just didn't say USM on it. Happily, sometime after I got out, the Navy came to their senses and went back to the other ones, because these were very hard to store on the ship. They had to actually bring lockers onto the ship because these had to be hung up.
Really? Oh.
The old Popeye uniforms, for lack of a better term, you folded them and stored them underneath your mattress. So there was all this wasted space on the ship. Everybody had to have theirs because you had to be ready with the dress uniform in blue. Was a double-breasted suit.
Really? Yeah.
Same thing with the same hat. So it all had to be hung up, or you didn't have it, or it wasn't available for you. But
you're a nice-looking kid,
Thanks. Thanks.
All right. Well, thank you, sir. I appreciate your time and sharing your story with us. It's been an interesting interview and fun.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you.
I think it's fun. It's great just to make sure, because every veteran is different. So some have
really okay.
Oh, we're not the same. I thought that's what boot camp was about.
Yeah, right.
Make everybody be the same. It worked for a while. My brother. That's another story. My brother told me how to get through boot camp. He said it's a game.
All right, it is.
Do what you're told. Let's see if I can remember that story, because I thought it was funny.
All right, David. Anytime.
Anytime. Ready?